The morning mist clung to the black hills like spirits refusing to depart, and Sarah Whitehorse felt their whispers in her bones. She had been walking for 3 days, following a vision that came to her in dreams. A young boy's cry echoing across the plains, calling her towards something she couldn't yet understand. Her Cherokee grandmother's medicine bag hung heavy against her hip, while her Irish father's medical instruments clinked softly in her pack. 2 worlds carried within one soul, and both seemed to pull her forward into the unknown. The Lakota camp appeared through the morning haze like a mirage made real. Tepees dotted the landscape in perfect harmony with the rolling hills, smoke rising from cooking fires in gentle spirals toward the endless sky. Sarah paused at the edge of the settlement, her breath catching in her throat. She had lived among her Cherokee people, worked in white settlements, but never had she felt such a powerful sense of destiny calling her forward. Something in this place needed her. She could feel it thrumming through the earth beneath her feet. Warriors on horseback noticed her first, their eyes sharp and assessing as they took in her mixed heritage. The high cheekbones and dark skin that spoke of native blood, the green eyes and auburn highlights that whispered of Irish ancestry. Whispers followed her as she walked deeper into the camp, children peering from behind their mothers' skirts, elders studying her with ancient wisdom in their gazes. Sarah kept her head high, letting her spirit speak before her words ever could. She had learned long ago that respect was earned through presence, not through pleading. "You walk with purpose, stranger." The voice belonged to Thunderhorse, a warrior whose reputation for fierceness was matched only by his skepticism of outsiders. His hand rested casually on his tomahawk, not threatening but ready. "These are dangerous times for one who belongs to no tribe to wander our lands." "I belong to the healing," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the way her heart hammered against her ribs. "I follow the call of pain that needs mending. My grandmother's spirit told me someone here suffers beyond the reach of ordinary medicine." Thunderhorse's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, a commotion erupted from the largest teepee in the camp's center. A woman's wail pierced the morning air, followed by urgent voices speaking in rapid Lakota. Sarah didn't need to understand the words to recognize the sound of desperate grief, the kind that came when death circled too close to someone beloved. "Little Wolf," Thunderhorse breathed, his warrior's mask slipping for just a moment. "Sitting Bull's nephew. He was wounded in yesterday's skirmish with the Blue Coats. The medicine man says—" He stopped, his jaw clenching. Sarah was already moving toward the sound of anguish, her healer's instincts overriding all social protocol. She could feel the boy's life force flickering like a candle in a storm, could sense the infection spreading through his young body like poison through water. Her hands tingled with the familiar energy that came when her gifts stirred to life, the power that had both blessed and cursed her since childhood. "Stop!" Thunderhorse's command was sharp, but Sarah didn't slow her pace. "Death doesn't wait for proper introductions," she called back, pushing aside the teepee flap without invitation. The sight that greeted her confirmed her worst fears. A boy of perhaps 12 summers lay burning with fever, his breathing shallow and labored. Around him, women wept, while the medicine man chanted over herbs that Sarah could already see were insufficient for wounds this severe. And there, kneeling beside the boy with tears streaming down his weathered face, was the man she had heard described in whispers across every settlement from here to the Missouri River. Sitting Bull, the holy man and war leader, looked up at her intrusion with eyes that held both fury and desperate hope. "Who dares enter my grief uninvited?" he asked. But Sarah was already kneeling beside Little Wolf, her hands hovering over his fevered body as she let her gift reach out to touch the edges of his failing life force. Sarah's hands trembled as she placed them gently on Little Wolf's burning forehead, feeling the fever that raged through his small body like wildfire through dry grass. The boy's breathing was so shallow she had to lean close to feel the whisper of air from his lips. Around her, the teepee fell silent except for the soft weeping of women and the crackling of the sacred fire that cast dancing shadows on the painted walls. "Your nephew is dying," Sarah said quietly, meeting Sitting Bull's fierce gaze without flinching. "The bullet wound in his chest has festered, and poison spreads through his blood like water through cracked earth. The fever will take him before dawn, unless we act now." Sitting Bull's eyes blazed with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "Our medicine man has tried everything. The spirits have not answered our prayers. Why should they listen to a stranger who carries the blood of two peoples but belongs fully to neither?" The medicine man, an elderly warrior named Grey Eagle, stepped forward with dignity and tact, despite the implied criticism. "Great Chief, I have done all that our ancestors taught. The boy's spirit wanders too far from his body. Perhaps it is his time to join the eternal hunt." Sarah shook her head, her hands still resting on Little Wolf's fevered skin. Through her touch, she could feel the boy's life force like a flickering candle in a hurricane, but there was still fight left in him. Her Cherokee grandmother had taught her to listen with more than her ears, to see with more than her eyes. His spirit doesn't want to leave. It's trapped by the infection, too weak to return fully to his body, but too strong to surrender to death. She reached into her medicine bag, pulling out herbs that made the gathered Lakota murmur in recognition, and others that were foreign to their traditions. "I need boiling water, clean cloths, and your trust." She looked directly at Sitting Bull. "I cannot heal him if you believe I will fail." Thunderhorse pushed into the teepee, his hand still on his weapon. "This could be a trick, Uncle. She appears when our youngest warrior lies dying, offers hope when we are desperate. How do we know she isn't sent by our enemies to ensure his death?" "Because," Sarah said without looking up from her preparations, mixing Cherokee healing herbs with medical supplies her Irish father had taught her to use, "if I wanted him dead, I would do nothing. Death is already winning this battle." She began cleaning the infected wound with movements that were both scientific and ritualistic, speaking softly in Cherokee as she worked. The boy's breathing changed slightly, becoming less labored, and Sitting Bull leaned forward intently. Sarah could feel the great leader's spiritual energy reaching out, testing her intentions, probing for deception or weakness. "I feel your gift," Sitting Bull said suddenly, his voice filled with wonder. "It flows through you like river water through stones, ancient and pure. But it is not only the medicine of your Cherokee blood. There is something else, something I have never felt before." Sarah's hand stilled for a moment as she met his eyes. "My Irish father was a surgeon, but he was also touched by what his people called the sight. My Cherokee grandmother could speak with plant spirits and see the paths of healing. I carry both gifts, and sometimes they work together in ways that surprise even me." As if to prove her words, Little Wolf's eyes fluttered open for the first time in 2 days. His gaze found his uncle's face, and he whispered something in Lakota that made Sitting Bull's breath catch in his throat. "He says he saw her in his dreams," Sitting Bull translated, his voice thick with emotion. "A woman with eyes like spring grass and hair touched by fire, calling his spirit back from the Shadowlands. He says she told him his people would need his strength for battles yet to come." Thunderhorse stepped back, his skepticism wavering as he witnessed something that defied his understanding. The other warriors and women in the teepee began to murmur prayers of gratitude, but Sarah kept working, knowing that the boy's recovery had only just begun. 3 days passed like seasons changing, and Little Wolf grew stronger with each sunrise. Sarah remained in the camp, tending to her patient while navigating the complex web of tribal politics and spiritual beliefs that surrounded her presence. She found herself caught between admiration and suspicion, hope and fear, as the Lakota people tried to understand what she represented. Mary Crow Feather, the eldest woman in the tribe, approached Sarah as she sat beside the cooking fire, grinding herbs for Little Wolf's continued treatment. The ancient woman's face was a map of wisdom earned through decades of survival on the harsh plains, her eyes sharp as obsidian despite her advanced years. "You carry a heavy burden, child," Mary said, settling beside Sarah with the careful grace of age. "Two bloodlines flow through your veins, each calling you toward different paths. I've watched you these past days, seen how you heal, not just with your hands, but with your heart. But I also see the pain you carry." Sarah's hands stilled in their grinding motion. "I've never belonged anywhere completely. Too Cherokee for the white settlements, too white for some Cherokee communities, and now here among the Lakota, I'm neither enemy nor true ally. Sometimes I wonder if my gift is a blessing or simply another way I'm meant to walk alone." "Alone," Mary Crowfeather chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Child, you heal with the wisdom of your Cherokee grandmother and the knowledge of your Irish father. You speak our language, though you learned it only days ago, and the spirits answer your calls as if you were born to our sacred ways. That is not the mark of someone meant to walk alone." Across the camp, Thunderhorse watched their conversation with calculating eyes. Since Little Wolf's recovery began, his hostility towards Sarah had shifted into something more complex, a grudging respect mixed with lingering doubt about her true loyalties. He approached them with the measured steps of a man still deciding whether to trust or challenge. "The scouts report blue coat movements 3 days' ride south," he announced, his gaze fixed on Sarah. "They seek to push us toward the reservations, away from the sacred Black Hills. Some of our warriors speak of asking you to treat any wounded who might fall in the coming conflicts. Others wonder if your healing hands might serve our enemies just as readily." Sarah met his challenging stare without flinching. "I heal because that is what my spirit demands, not because I choose sides in wars made by men who fear what they cannot understand. If your warriors are wounded, I will tend them. If their enemies lie bleeding, I will tend them too. The gift does not discriminate, and neither do I. Even if those enemies wear blue coats and carry orders to destroy our way of life," Thunderhorse pressed. "Pain is pain, regardless of the color of the uniform that covers it," Sarah replied firmly. "But know this, Thunderhorse, I would die before I betrayed the trust Sitting Bull has placed in me. Little Wolf calls me aunt now. This camp has become my family. I cannot heal the wounds of war, but I can heal the wounds of warriors." That evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of war and promise, Sitting Bull summoned Sarah to his lodge. The great leader sat cross-legged before his fire, smoking a pipe whose smoke carried prayers to the 4 directions. His weathered face showed the weight of leadership, the burden of making choices that would determine his people's survival. "Tomorrow we move deeper into the hills," Sitting Bull said without preamble. "The soldiers follow, and blood will flow like spring rivers. My nephew lives because of your gift, but now I must ask something harder of you. Will you stay with us, knowing that your presence among us makes you an enemy of your father's people? Will you heal our warriors when battle comes?" Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the pull of 2 worlds, 2 peoples, 2 different kinds of loyalty. When she opened them again, her decision was clear in her steady gaze. "I will stay," she said simply. "Not as Cherokee, not as Irish, but as what I've always been, a bridge between worlds, a healer in times of breaking." The vision came to Sarah like lightning splitting the night sky, sudden and blinding in its clarity. She jolted awake in her borrowed teepee, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool mountain air. In her dream, she had seen a river valley thick with soldiers, their blue uniforms scattered like fallen sky across the grass. She had seen Lakota warriors riding like thunder given form, and she had seen blood, so much blood that the earth itself seemed to cry out in anguish. But most disturbing of all, she had seen herself standing in the middle of it all, her hands glowing with an otherworldly light, as she moved between fallen bodies, trying desperately to heal wounds faster than war could create them. The vision felt less like a dream and more like a prophecy, and it terrified her. Sarah wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stepped into the pre-dawn darkness. The camp was quiet, except for the soft breathing of sleeping families and the distant call of night birds in the hills. She made her way to the stream that ran beside the settlement, needing the sound of moving water to calm her racing thoughts. "You saw it too." Sitting Bull's voice came from the shadows beside the water, startling her. The great leader sat on a boulder, his own face marked by the strain of sleepless contemplation. The vision of the great battle to come. I have been seeing it for weeks now, but tonight it came with more force than ever before. "The valley by the Little Bighorn River," Sarah whispered, the name coming to her lips as if spoken by the spirits themselves. "Hundreds of soldiers, maybe thousands. And your people." She stopped, unable to voice what she had seen. "My people will fight like warriors born for glory," Sitting Bull said quietly. "But victory comes with its own price. Many will fall, on both sides. That is why the spirits sent you to us, Sarah Whitehorse. Not just to heal Little Wolf, but to be ready for what comes after." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the water's eternal song. Then Sarah spoke the fear that had been growing in her heart since the vision began. "What if I can't save them all? What if my gift isn't strong enough for what's coming?" "Then you save who you can," Sitting Bull replied, with the wisdom of a man who had made impossible choices his entire life. "The spirits do not ask us to be gods, only to be faithful to the gifts they give us. Your healing hands, your bridging heart, these are weapons against despair as much as any rifle or lance." As dawn broke over the Black Hills, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, other members of the tribe began to stir. Thunderhorse emerged from his lodge, his face grim with purpose. Little Wolf, now strong enough to walk but still recovering, helped his aunt tend the morning fire. Mary Crow Feather gathered herbs, her ancient hands moving with practiced efficiency. "There is something else," Sarah said as she watched the camp come to life. "In my vision, I saw a white officer among the fallen, a captain with kind eyes who spoke my name before he died. I think I'm meant to save him too." Sitting Bull's expression darkened. "That path leads to accusations of betrayal from both sides. Our warriors will question your loyalty if you heal their enemies. The soldiers will not trust a woman who rides with savages." "Then I'll walk that path alone if I must," Sarah said, standing and brushing dirt from her skirts. "The gift doesn't choose sides, and neither will I. When the battle comes, I'll heal warriors and soldiers alike, and let both sides call me traitor if they wish." As if summoned by her words, a scout came riding hard into camp, his horse lathered with sweat and his face painted with urgency. His message was brief but chilling. Thousands of blue coats were moving toward the Little Bighorn, led by a general called Custer who had never known defeat. The great battle Sarah had seen in her visions was only days away. The morning of June 25, 1876, dawned with an eerie stillness that made Sarah's skin crawl with anticipation. The combined forces of Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors had gathered in the valley of the Little Bighorn, their numbers greater than any assembly Sarah had ever witnessed. The air thrummed with tension and spiritual energy as thousands of native fighters prepared for what they knew would be a battle that would echo through generations. Sarah had positioned herself on a rise overlooking the valley, her medical supplies arranged with methodical precision. Mary Crow Feather sat beside her, chanting softly while grinding healing herbs into fine powder. The old woman's presence brought comfort, but Sarah's hands still trembled as she watched the distant dust clouds that marked the approach of Custer's 7th Cavalry. "Remember," Mary whispered without breaking her rhythm, "today you become more than healer. Today you become bridge between worlds of pain. Let your spirit guide your hands, not your fears." The first shots rang out like thunder, cracking the morning peace. From her vantage point, Sarah watched as hundreds of blue-uniformed soldiers rode into the valley, confident in their superior weapons and military training. What they didn't expect was the coordinated response of nearly 3,000 native warriors who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Within minutes, the orderly cavalry charge dissolved into chaos. Sarah saw Thunderhorse leading a group of Lakota warriors in a flanking maneuver that cut off the soldiers' retreat. She watched Little Wolf, still not fully recovered, but determined to fight beside his uncle's warriors, counting coup on fallen enemies with the fearless joy of youth. Then the wounded began arriving. The first was a young Cheyenne warrior with an arrow through his shoulder, his face painted for war but twisted with pain. Sarah's hands moved automatically, drawing on years of training and a lifetime of spiritual gifts. As she worked, more injured fighters appeared, Lakota with bullet wounds, Arapaho with saber cuts, and then, as the battle intensified, the soldiers began to fall back toward her position. "Sarah!" Thunderhorse's voice cut through the chaos as he helped a wounded comrade toward her makeshift field hospital. "The Bluecoats are retreating this way. You must choose now. Will you heal only our people, or will you risk everything for your principles?" Before she could answer, a figure in a torn blue uniform stumbled up the hill, blood streaming from a head wound. It was Captain James Morrison, the kind-eyed officer from her vision, and he was dying. Behind him, 3 Lakota warriors pursued with raised tomahawks, their faces painted for killing. Sarah didn't hesitate. She stepped between the warriors and the wounded soldier, her arms spread wide and her voice carrying power she didn't know she possessed. "Stop! This ground is sacred now, a place of healing, not killing. Any who would shed blood here must go through me first." The warriors paused, confused by her intervention. Captain Morrison collapsed at her feet, his life ebbing away as quickly as water through sand. Sarah knelt beside him, her hands already glowing with the familiar warmth of her healing gift, and began to work. "You're insane," Thunderhorse breathed, but there was admiration in his voice alongside the disbelief. "You know what this looks like to our people. You know what price you might pay." "I know what my gift demands," Sarah replied, without looking up from her patient. "And I know that healing doesn't recognize the color of uniforms or the language of prayers. This man will live because life is sacred, not because he deserves mercy more than others." As word spread through the battlefield that a woman was healing warriors and soldiers alike on the sacred hill, something unprecedented began to happen. Fighters from both sides started bringing their wounded to her position, creating an unofficial truce zone in the middle of one of history's most famous battles. Sarah worked until her hands bled and her vision blurred with exhaustion, saving lives that would have been lost to hatred and war. When Sitting Bull finally climbed the hill to see what had created this miraculous sanctuary, he found Sarah collapsed over her last patient, unconscious but still breathing. Around her, dozens of men who should have been enemies sat side by side, united only by their debt to the woman who had refused to let them die. Sarah awakened 3 days later to find herself lying in Sitting Bull's own lodge, wrapped in the finest buffalo robes the tribe possessed. Sunlight filtered through the painted walls, casting dancing patterns of light and shadow across her exhausted face. Her hands, bandaged and tender from her marathon of healing, ached with a deep satisfaction she had never experienced before. Mary Crowfeather sat beside her, carefully spooning broth between Sarah's cracked lips. "You have slept the sleep of spirits," the old woman murmured with gentle reverence. 3 days and 3 nights, while the whole camp waited to see if your soul would return from the Shadowlands, where you traveled to bring back so many others. "The wounded," Sarah whispered, struggling to sit up despite her weakness. "Captain Morrison, Thunderhorse, Little Wolf, are they?" "All live," came Sitting Bull's voice from the lodge entrance. The great leader stepped inside, his weathered face marked by an expression Sarah had never seen before, something between awe and profound respect. 37 warriors and soldiers owe their lives to your hands. The stories are already spreading across the plains like wildfire. As her strength returned, Sarah learned the full scope of what had transpired during the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Custer and much of his immediate force had been destroyed, but the larger war between native peoples and the expanding United States would continue. What would not continue unchanged was how both sides viewed the possibility of healing across enemy lines. Captain Morrison, recovered enough to travel, had come to see her before departing with the surviving members of his unit. His eyes held the same kindness Sarah had seen in her vision, but now they also carried something deeper, an understanding that would change how he viewed the conflict for the rest of his life. "I don't know what you are," he said quietly, his hat in his hands, and his voice thick with emotion. Angel, saint, or something beyond my understanding. But I know that you saved my life when you had every reason to let me die. That debt can never be repaid, but it can be remembered. I'll carry your story back to every fort and settlement from here to Washington, and maybe, just maybe, some will listen. Thunderhorse, his own wounds healing well, approached as Morrison departed. The warrior's face had lost all traces of skepticism, replaced by something approaching veneration. I was wrong about you, he said simply. I thought strength came only from the ability to take life in battle. You have shown me that true warrior's power lies in the ability to preserve life, even when everything around you calls for death. But it was Sitting Bull's final words that would echo in Sarah's heart for the rest of her days. As the camp prepared to move deeper into the mountains, seeking sanctuary from the inevitable military response to their victory, the great leader called her before the assembled tribe. My people, he said, his voice carrying across the gathering like sacred thunder, we have witnessed something that will be told around fires for generations yet unborn. Sarah Whitehorse came to us as a stranger, carrying the blood of two peoples, but belonging fully to neither. She leaves us as something more, a bridge between worlds, a warrior whose weapons are healing hands and a heart that knows no enemies. He turned to face Sarah directly, his eyes reflecting the firelight like deep pools of ancient wisdom. I name you sacred among warriors, for you have shown us that the greatest battles are not won with lance and rifle, but with courage to heal when everything demands destruction. Your story will be remembered when the names of generals are forgotten, and your legacy will teach future generations that there is another way to be strong. As Sarah prepared to leave the camp, carrying new supplies and the blessings of 3 tribes, Little Wolf ran to her side. The boy who had brought her into this world of conflict and healing now stood tall and healthy, his eyes bright with the promise of the warrior he would become. Aunt Sarah, he said, using the title the tribe had given her, will you ever come back to us? Sarah knelt to meet his eyes, her heart full of love for these people who had accepted her so completely. I go where the healing calls me, Little Wolf, but know this. A part of my spirit will always ride with your people, and if you ever need me, send your prayers on the wind. I will hear them. As she rode away from the camp that had become her temporary home, Sarah carried with her something more valuable than any treasure, the knowledge that she had found her true purpose. She was no longer caught between 2 worlds, but had become a bridge that connected them. Behind her, the smoke of cooking fires rose into the endless sky, carrying the prayers and gratitude of a people who would never forget the woman who had shown them that healing was the highest form of warfare. Her legend was just beginning.